At my brother's wedding, I discovered that my husband was cheating on me with my sister-in-law. What my brother did. The day that was supposed to be the happiest of my life turned into the beginning of a silent nightmare. Amidst the smiles, toasts, and promises, it took just one glance in the wrong direction for my life to collapse without warning. I never imagined that, hidden behind so much celebration, lay a secret capable of destroying not only my marriage but everything I believed about love, loyalty, and family. There were months of walking through pain and silence, facing truths I never asked to discover. But it was also on this tortuous path that I found courage, unexpected bonds, and revelations that changed my story forever. Today, I am not the same woman who entered that ceremony with shining eyes. I am stronger, more conscious, and above all, the owner of my own destiny. I am very happy to have you here. Follow my story and comment on the city where you are watching from so that I know how far my story is reaching. The hall glowed with golden lights dancing on the hanging crystals. My dress was impeccable, custom-made for that moment I had dreamed of for years. People smiled around me, toasting, wishing me happiness that I absorbed with gratitude. I was there, at the altar of my desires, next to a man who said he loved me. Everything seemed perfect, at least that was what I wanted to believe. I walked among the guests, feeling the warmth of the celebration wrap around me like a hug. The flowers exhaled a sweet perfume, mixed with the light sound of the orchestra in the background. My heart palpitated with almost childlike joy, as if I had finally won all the internal wars I had fought. My wedding was a spectacle worthy of fairy tales. And I was the princess crowned on that night of eternal promises. My eyes searched for Ethan. He had not been by my side for a few minutes, and that was strange. He never disappeared without telling me. With a glass of champagne in hand, I smiled to disguise the growing discomfort. I walked to the reserved area, believing he was resolving something with the organizers. I was still smiling at the guests, trying not to look anxious. But an unease born in the pit of my stomach was beginning to ferment. I went toward the side corridor, where I saw someone disappear seconds before. My steps were guided more by intuition than reason. The white door, slightly ajar, seemed to call me like a silent and hostile invitation. The muffled sound of whispered voices echoed lightly. I leaned my body slowly, my heart racing, my chest tight. But Ethan was taking too long. I looked through the crack with fear, as if anticipating a pain I did not yet understand. And there they were, Ethan and Claire, my best friend, so close that the air between them seemed intimate. The kiss happened without ceremony, soft and sudden, as if it were something natural. My eyes burned, but I remained silent, paralyzed. The image burned my retina and sealed something inside me. The world seemed to unravel in slow motion. I could not react immediately. I felt the ground fall away, the air become thin, the dress tighten. My skin tingled, and the sounds of the party turned into distant noise. My fingers trembled, but I continued holding the glass as if it were the only anchor of my sanity. I took a step back, then two, until I hid behind the cold wall. Every heartbeat seemed to denounce that I had discovered too much. But it was still not enough. Claire laughed at something he said, and my mind refused to associate that laugh with betrayal. The image I kept of them was sharp. His hand on her waist, the touch on her hair, the security of the gesture. That was not a slip. It was rehearsed, repeated, sewn with time, part of a plan of which I was the only ignorant one. The pain gave way to anger. I was not just betrayed, I was used. I went back down the corridor with firm steps and held breath. No one could know that I knew. Not yet. I returned to the party and smiled, stronger than ever, as if nothing had happened. Inside, I was a field in flames. Outside, the perfect bride. No one noticed. No one saw. But inside me, something had died. What I saw through the crack took his breath away. I continued smiling, waving, receiving wishes of happiness like sweet daggers. But my mind repeated the same scene, as if it wanted me to feel every detail. Ethan approached me minutes later, kissing my forehead with staged sweetness. I smiled back, because now I knew. But he did not know that I knew. And that gave me power. The war began there. It was not just betrayal. It was a setup. I kept close to people, distributing sympathy and calculated smiles. The anger burned in silence like a poison I controlled drop by drop. I would not let them see me weak, not even for a second. The stage was still mine. If they had a plan, I now had mine. And it did not involve a scandal, not yet. First, I needed to understand the size of the lie. I avoided being alone with Ethan, claiming I wanted to enjoy the party with everyone. He did not insist, which only confirmed what I already knew. He wanted distance until the next act. Claire disappeared for a while, perhaps to compose herself, or to ensure no one had seen us. Nothing about me was spontaneous anymore. Every gesture was rehearsed, every word weighed. I was acting too. On the dance floor, I felt a firm presence by my side. It was Richard, my brother. His eyes observed me more than usual. He was always perceptive, but now he seemed alert. His hand touched my shoulder with silent affection, as if he wanted to remind me that I was not alone. His look was a question I did not know how to answer without collapsing. But he already knew something had changed. Your brother noticed something. The early morning arrived with the weight of an uncomfortable silence. The guests were leaving little by little, and I maintained my pose, thanking them with delicacy. Ethan retired before me, claiming exhaustion. Richard waited for the last car to leave to approach. He took me to a secluded garden, where the music did not reach us. The cold of the night was less icy than what I felt inside. "You saw, didn't you?" he asked directly, like someone who was fed up with pretending. My eyes widened, not out of surprise, but from realizing that he knew too much. I tried to deny it, but he just smiled, like someone deciphering an ancient secret. The mask fell without warning, and what I found on his face was something between sadness and indignation. Richard sat on the stone bench, asking me to do the same. "They were already together before the engagement," he said, without beating around the bush. My chest tightened. He was not guessing, he was stating. And there was more. His eyes burned with an uncomfortable truth. "Claire came to me months ago. She tried to involve me too. She said it was part of something bigger. A plan, Lauren. A plan with a name and a price." My blood ran cold. Richard did not seem surprised to see my pain. He expected it. He held my hand tightly, as if he wanted to anchor me to the little that was still real. "They wanted your name, your inheritance, your influence. Ethan is just the facade. Claire is the one pulling the strings. I wanted to protect you, but they were faster." He already knew, and he smiled. Richard took a thick envelope from his pocket. Inside, photos, messages, statements, proof. All dated, organized, cruel. I saw Ethan with Claire in various places, trips, dates, and more. I saw messages exchanged between Claire and someone I did not recognize. Financial matters, dates, transactions. My name appeared repeatedly, as if I were a bargaining chip. My face burned. "You were chosen, not loved," said Richard, his voice choked with guilt. My stomach turned. All I felt was a mixture of disgust, humiliation, and despair, but also anger. As now I saw clearly, it was a game, a theater, and I was the prize. Richard looked at me firmly, like someone delivering the truth and expecting action. "There is still time to turn the game around, but it will hurt." The night seemed endless, but I was waking up. A bitter awakening, but necessary. I did not cry. Not there. The tears would come later when no one else could see them. Now it was time to understand the trap, and escape it with intelligence. Because I would not lose to Claire, nor to Ethan, nor to anyone. The marriage is a trap, and you are the key. The first rays of morning sun found me in front of the mirror, remade, rehearsed, ready for the second act of the lie. I wore the same smile with which I entered the ceremony, but now it was a mask sculpted by force. The farewell breakfast for the guests was another showcase, and I, once again, the perfect doll. My steps were light, my posture impeccable. No one could suspect that I was bleeding inside. I greeted everyone with rehearsed naturalness, thanking them for being present. Claire approached as if nothing had happened, her cream dress and sweet perfume disguising the rot I now knew. She smiled at me like a loyal friend, as if the day before had been just another successful party. I had to swallow the bitter taste of the performance, and I returned the smile with equal intensity. The game was silent. Ethan was by her side, always attentive, always charming. If he touched me, it was with the caution of someone who fears being discovered. I already saw him as a stranger, an actor on the stage of my life. Their every gesture was a reminder that I could not lower my guard. I needed to maintain the disguise until the right moment. My plan was to resist, pretend, survive, until I could react with precision. Richard watched me from afar, eyes firm, arms crossed. His look was a mute code. It was not time yet. I agreed with a slight nod. The control was ours now, not theirs. Claire laughed, perhaps believing she still dominated me. But my smile was colder, firmer, more dangerous. Claire smiles. Lauren fights back. We gathered in the property's garden for the photo session with the closest family members. It was the tradition of every Whitmore wedding, and no scandal could preempt it. Richard approached with a glass of juice and a contained, discreet expression. "Hold on a little longer," he murmured by my side, as if commenting on the weather. "Everything is ready. Just missing the moment." I looked at him with silent gratitude. His presence was my lifeline. I would not have strength without this support, and he knew it. He handed me a folded note at the bottom of the glass, something no one would notice. "Wait for the invitation to the stage. The revelation will be public." My heart raced. The stage. Yes, they would be exposed in front of everyone. Every minute seemed longer than the last, and I needed to maintain my composure. Ethan approached for another photo, whispering something silly in my ear, like a man in love. I felt like laughing at his effort. Claire was in the background talking to family investors. They had no idea who they were dealing with, but soon everything would change, and they would see the truth without filters. The head table would be the turning point. Richard had organized everything. When the newlyweds were called to the stage for the final toast, the plan would unfold. I just needed to wait for the right moment, swallow a few more false words, allow a few more poisonous compliments, and then they would all fall. Wait for the invitation to the stage. What no one predicted was the arrival of someone who was not in the plans. Mrs. Whitmore, Ethan's grandmother, appeared at the door of the hall like an unannounced storm. She wore black like someone protesting, and her gaze cut through the room like a razor. Silence. Everyone turned to see her march between the tables as if the party belonged to her. And in a way it did. She had financed part of that wedding. She ignored the smiles and went straight to Claire, pointing her finger. "Do you think I am blind?" she said, her voice trembling with fury and emotion. Claire turned pale, the words stuck in her throat. Mrs. Whitmore pulled a folded sheet from her purse and held it up in front of everyone. "Emails, meetings, embezzled money. You didn't just fool Lauren. You fooled me too. And this, my dear, has a price." The hall turned into a field of shock. People whispered, surprised, trying to understand what was happening. Ethan stood up, tried to intervene, but his grandmother raised her hand with authority. "Silence, Ethan. Now you will listen too." Richard approached discreetly, ready for the next step. But that intervention changed the plans. The impact had already begun. Claire tried to deny it, but her voice was shaky, disconnected from the confidence she always carried. "You don't know what you're saying," she began. But Mrs. Whitmore moved even closer. "I know exactly. And you are going to fall. Here. Now." The tension was unbearable. But inside me something began to break free. She was not so innocent after all. Claire took 2 steps back, and her body wavered as if her soul had withdrawn prematurely. The glass in her hand slipped and shattered on the floor, and then she fell. She fainted right there, in front of everyone like a rotten flower exposed to the sun. Screams arose, some people ran to her, others just watched in shock. Chaos began to settle in slowly, like a dark wave advancing. I remained motionless. Part of me wanted to approach, but another part knew this was just the beginning. Claire was good at dramatizing. And perhaps at that moment that was just another attempt at manipulation. Richard stepped forward, asking for space, but his eyes were fixed on me. He knew. It was time. Nothing else could contain the truth. And it would come with force. Richard takes the microphone. He went up to the small ceremony stage with the same calm as always. He picked up the microphone like someone holding a sword. The guests murmured, trying to understand what was happening. Ethan looked around, restless, as if looking for a culprit to save him. Richard asked for silence, his voice clear, firm. "First of all, I apologize. This ceremony was built on lies." Glances were exchanged, hands covered mouths, The atmosphere contorted. Lauren is my sister. And I saw her being used, manipulated, betrayed. The words weighed in the air. Ethan tried to interrupt but was restrained by discreetly positioned security guards. Richard pointed at him. Ethan, come up here. Now. You owe an explanation. The hall froze. And he, pale, went up to the stage like a defendant before the court. One last toast. The screen at the back of the stage came to life. Images appeared, one after another. Ethan and Claire, the kiss. The same kiss I saw through the crack in the door. The hall went absolutely silent. The images continued, showing the two at dinners, hotels, embracing. Then came the audios, plans discussed, amounts mentioned, the name Lauren spoken as a piece. As bait. As a prize. I closed my eyes. It was too much. But it was necessary. The reactions were varied. Shock, indignation, anger. Some people cried. Others just stared. Claire was still unconscious on the floor. Ethan tried to deny it with his head, but his voice did not come out. Richard finished with a look at me. I took a deep breath and stood up. The crowd turned. And for the first time I spoke. This is what remains of my marriage. A spectacle of lies. People began to move away, one by one, leaving Claire and Ethan surrounded only by the echo of their own ruin. The truth had won, but not without wounds. I was standing but marked. Yet stronger. More lucid. I survived the trap and now it was time to rebuild. No one had left unscathed. Claire and Ethan knew the circle was closing, and the two met in one of the mansion's rooms, planning their escape. He seemed nervous, more agitated than usual. His eyes sought a way out, a way to escape the trap they had gotten themselves into. Claire, on the other hand, was colder, calculating as always. The fact that they were being exposed in public did not seem to shake her. For her, there was still a way to turn the game around. But the doors were locked. Ethan, desperate, searched the room for a window or some means of escape. Claire told him to calm down, but his nervousness was obvious. He knew time was against them, and that the revelation of the scandal was just the beginning. They could not get away unpunished, not after everything they had done. So, with no other alternatives, Claire looked at him and said with a calculating gaze, "We need to go now, Ethan. Before it's too late." And it was at that moment that the detectives arrived, interrupting their escape plans. The sound of footsteps echoed through the corridors, and a firm voice called Ethan's name. Claire stood motionless, eyes wide, and Ethan tried to compose himself, but it was already too late. The truth was about to unfold. No door, no escape plan would save them now. But the detectives were there. As the two were taken into custody, the mansion turned into a scene of chaos. People ran from one side to the other, trying to understand what was happening. Everything they had planned crumbled before everyone's eyes. Richard, from afar, watched with a look of silent triumph, as if revenge was finally being served. But even in the midst of that turmoil, he knew that this was just the beginning. Something bigger was still to come. The revelation of Mr. Dalton was an unexpected blow. He, until then a trusted ally of the Whitmores, proved to be a traitor. During the investigation, documents emerged that compromised him gravely. Shady deals, illicit transactions, and even bribes involving Claire and Ethan were discovered. He had involved himself deeply in the coup engineered against the family, and the papers were irrefutable proof of his participation. The man who appeared to be a respectable figure was, in fact, stuck up to his neck in filth. When Mr. Dalton was confronted with the evidence, his behavior changed immediately. He tried to deny everything, but the weight of the proof let him no escape. In a last attempt to save himself, he offered bribes to the detectives, trying to convince them to bury the evidence and close the case. His proposal was refused, of course, and his face, once impassive, now displayed the panic of someone who knew he was lost. He tries to bribe in vain. The detectives began to move more firmly, confirming that the web of corruption was even larger than imagined. Mr. Dalton, in his desperate attempt to flee prison, tried to hide behind the scenes of the mansion but was found quickly. Chaos was installed, and the truth began to leave the paper, taking shape relentlessly. Arrests began to be made, and known faces of society began to be taken away in handcuffs. For everyone, it was the end of the line. In the midst of this turmoil, the arrests began and fear hung in the air. Claire and Ethan were taken into custody, but the tension was not restricted to them. The impact of the revelations hit the Whitmore life hard. Authorities were invading every corner, searching documents, interrogating allies, and discovering other secrets. Panic took over everyone involved, and what had seemed like a victory party was turning into a great tragedy. However, amidst the chaos, Claire's and Lauren's eyes met. The hatred Claire felt for me was there, explicit like poison disguised as anger. She could not accept that her world of lies had collapsed so fast, and the look she cast in my direction was more than a simple expression of anger. It was a challenge. She wanted revenge, wanted to destroy everything I had built. And in her eyes I realized the game was far from over. Claire stares at Lauren with pure hatred. The moment the handcuffs were placed on Claire and Ethan, something snapped inside Claire. She could no longer control the chaos she herself had created, and anger consumed her. In a frantic impulse, she lunged toward where I was, her hand closing around silver scissors. She wanted to hurt me, destroy me, and the expression on her face was that of a desperate woman, ready to fight with everything she had. The attack was quick, fierce. I dodged the blow, but she was increasingly enraged. The tension in the air was palpable, and the fear was evident. I knew she would not hesitate to hurt me if she had the chance. But before she could take another step, a figure appeared, blocking the scissors. Richard, always ready to protect, threw himself in front of me. He took the blow to the shoulder, and the pain in his eyes was a reflection of the sacrifice he was making to save me. Claire pulled back, looking horrified at what she had just done. Richard, who had always been the pillar in my life, was wounded, and I did not know what to do. But he looked at me with strength, saying he was fine, that it was just a small obstacle. He tried to remain firm, but the internal struggle was clear. I knew that, at that moment, the line between what was right and what was necessary was becoming increasingly thin. A body throws itself in front. Ethan, who had been taken to the hospital due to stress and the possible reaction to Claire's blow, was in serious condition. However, before being sedated, he had one last conversation with me. His words were loaded with regret, but also with a harsh truth. He confessed that he loved me, but that power, money, had always been more important to him. He regretted it, but that would not change what happened. I loved you, but I chose power. After weeks of investigation and pain, I finally found myself before Ethan in a court. I knew I could not continue with him, that marriage had never been real. He betrayed me, used me, and his confession, even if painful, gave me the freedom I needed. From that moment on, there was nothing left between us but rubble. Lauren asks for divorce, leaves to start over. Now, before the crowd, as I signed the divorce papers, I felt stronger. I was alone but free. However, life reminded me that the past, like a shadow, would always stay behind me, ready to haunt. New life. But what about the past? The sun of the Bahamas seemed to have the power to erase old shadows. It was there that I chose to start over, far from the cold halls and memories that insisted on hurting. Amidst the white sandy beaches and turquoise sea, I built a new routine with my daughter, Haley. Every day was a small victory. Sincere laughter, light steps, peace. And it was on one of these mornings while she ran along the beach that I met Nathan. He was different from everything I knew. He had a simple, calm way, and his eyes carried a past he did not need to hide. He worked as a tourist diver, and his passion for the ocean was contagious. We saw each other for the first time when Haley tripped near a boat, and he helped her with kindness. There were no promises, no seductions, just a pure, unpretentious gesture. And my heart, still tired, felt something new. Our meetings started happening without planning. A coffee, a conversation, a dive. Everything light, as if time respected the rhythm of what was being born there. Haley adored him, and her laughter beside him told me more than words. I was not yet ready for a romance, but I also could not deny the comfort Nathan brought. It was a presence that demanded nothing beyond the now. One afternoon, as we walked back to the inn, Haley held his hand naturally. I looked at the two of them with a tight knot in my throat. For the first time in a long time, I felt hope. The daughter smiles at him. The sea breeze brought an almost anesthetic calm, and I allowed myself to smile more. Nathan became a constant friend, someone who appeared at the right moments, always with something kind to say. With him, silence was not uncomfortable. It was peace. We did not talk about the past. We did not talk about losses. It was as if we had made a silent pact to live in the present, and that was enough. Then on a sunny morning, the receptionist at the inn handed me a small package. It was simple, wrapped in craft paper with a delicate ribbon. Haley's name was handwritten in neat letters. "To Haley," said the card, "with all my love. Signed, Grandma." My entire body stiffened. My mother was dead, and Haley never knew any other grandmother besides her. Nathan noticed my expression and approached. "Is everything okay?" he asked, worried. I did not know what to answer. There was something wrong with that delivery. The handwriting was strangely familiar, and the content of the wrapping made me uneasy. It was a child's bracelet, gold with a small blue stone, and a short note, undated. Something inside me screamed for answers. I tried to rationalize. Someone could be joking, or maybe it was an absurd coincidence. But when I opened the envelope completely and touched the paper, I smelled the scent. An old perfume, the same one my mother used. My stomach turned. Haley, beside me, thought the gift was beautiful and put it on her wrist with joy. "To Haley. Signed, Grandma." The note was small, but the impact was immense. It said only, "So she never forgets who she is." And on the back, a hand-drawn symbol. A flower intertwined with a star. Something I had seen before but did not remember where. My heart raced. I turned the envelope over and found a secret fold. Inside, one more piece of paper. "Adele never forgot." My body froze. I knew that name. Adele. It was a name my mother mentioned in her nightmares, when she called for someone while sleeping, always in a low voice, as if she feared someone would hear her. And now it appeared there, linked to my daughter. The bracelet, the symbol, the name, everything conspired to take me back to the origin. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Nathan tried to calm me down, but I was no longer listening. I was trapped in that handwriting. That handwriting was my mother's, of that I had no doubt. But she had been dead for years. How could it be? I felt dizzy. Haley looked at me, confused, still with the bracelet on her wrist. The gift now seemed like a warning. Or a call. And I knew where I needed to go. Lauren Freeze's. She knew that handwriting. I returned to my mother's old house with a tight heart. It had been years since I last set foot there, and every object seemed to whisper forgotten memories. The smell of old wood, the paintings on the walls, everything was intact, as if time had stopped to preserve the secrets. I left Haley with a close friend and went in alone. I knew what I was looking for, even without knowing what I expected to find. I passed through the rooms, touched the furniture with reverence, and went up the stairs in silence. The attic had always been a forbidden place, locked with a key. I remembered when, still a child, I tried to enter there and my mother freaked out. She kept something in that place, something she never wanted me to see. And now, here I was, an adult, breaking the warning itself. The attic door creaked as it was forced. It was unlocked this time. The smell was different from the rest of the house. Denser. Older. Dust covered everything and stacked boxes formed a maze. I began to search carefully, moving objects aside, opening chests. That was when I found a dark wooden box, locked with a padlock. It was hidden behind a row of old suitcases. The name Adele was discreetly engraved on the side. My heart almost stopped. That was real. The name was not a delusion. A box locked in the attic. I took the box to a local locksmith. I could not wait. When they opened it, inside there were dozens of letters, old papers, faded photos. I began to read with difficulty. The letters were addressed to my mother, but signed by a woman named Adele. They spoke of adoption, of difficult choices, of protecting 2 children from a past that could not come to light. The names, Lauren and Richard. Every word deconstructed me. My whole life was a lie disguised as love. We were not biological children of the one we always called Mom. We were raised by her, but we came from another story, from another origin. And Adele, who was she anyway? Mother? Aunt? A runaway woman? The answers were between the lines, but the pain was clear. They had hidden us, perhaps to save us. But now everything was coming to the surface. At the bottom of the box I found a separate envelope. Inside, a bank safe deposit key. Attached to it, a short letter. If one day the truths knock at your door, open the safe. It holds what I could not say. The handwriting again was my mother's. She knew that one day I would find that. And even without the courage to tell me in life, she left a path. Now I needed to follow it to the end. I left the locksmith in silence with the key firm in my hand. My life was about to change again. But this time I wanted to know everything. And a bank safe key. I returned home with my heart in pieces and handed the documents to Richard. He read everything calmly, his eyes becoming increasingly moist. In the end he hugged me in silence. It took a few minutes until he spoke. I remembered her. Very little. But Adele. She sang to me when I was sick. I thought it was a dream. But it was real. We are not Mom's biological children. His words confirmed what I already knew. But hearing it aloud was like tearing an open wound. I did not feel less loved but rather more lost. Who was I after all? Where did I really come from? Why did they hide us? Richard did not have all the answers. Only fragments of memory and a pain as intense as mine. We were two survivors of a hidden truth. I spent hours analyzing the letters. There was a deep pain in them, a sacrificed love. Adele seemed to have given up her own children so they would have a better chance. And my mother? She raised them with everything she could but always kept the truth. It remained to discover why. What was so dangerous about our origins? The bank key would be the next step. And perhaps the most decisive one. I closed my eyes for a moment, hugging my brother. At that moment we were not heirs of fortune, nor victims of scandals. We were just two lost children trying to understand who we were. And the truth? The truth still breathed somewhere. The truth was still alive. For weeks I buried myself in silent research, connecting old files, forgotten newspapers, and poorly transcribed interviews. A car accident that occurred 25 years ago caught my attention. The date coincided with the time the letters mentioned the definitive separation between Adele and the children. The vehicle involved had gone off the road in a remote region and caught fire. Everyone thought the driver had died. However, the local hospital records did not match the death certificate. The charred body was never officially identified. Only burned documents were found nearby, presumably belonging to a woman named Marla Santos. The press forgot the case, and the authorities did not investigate beyond what was necessary. Pieces were missing. But inside me, something said that woman was not just a coincidence in time. I continued scouring information and discovered a recurring name between the lines of several archived lawsuits. The Dalton Syndicate. An organization with a history of money laundering and political involvement, always covered up by influential lawyers. And among the documents I received in the safe, there were suspicious value transfers shortly before the accident. Adele or Marla seemed to have crossed the path of people who were too powerful. The questions began to consume me. What if Adele had simulated her own death to escape? What if she were alive, watching from a distance? The names began to connect, and the past insisted on resurfacing. A woman never identified. I went back to the name Dalton with more depth. The syndicate, although officially disbanded, still had live traces in legal databases. Crossing the partners' information with the letters Adele wrote, I found something alarming. She had worked for one of the group's shell companies before disappearing. It was possible that by trying to leave she had become a threat. A disposable piece. The strangest thing was a signature that appeared on several old documents. M.I. Whitmore. Marla Adele. I used handwriting analysis resources and managed to confirm, the same person who signed Haley's gift, and who was now linked to the dark past of the syndicate. My heart beat fast. There was someone trying to protect us, or watch us. And in both possibilities, Adele was still alive. The letters seemed increasingly urgent as the years went by, as if she knew time was running out. One of the last ones said, "When she knows the truth, maybe she will forgive me." This did not seem to come from someone dead for 25 years. I searched medical records, bank records, any trace, and I found a recent name with the same signature pattern, used in a rural clinic. It was her. I prepared everything for a visit, but something else appeared. A former employee of the Whitmores, Mr. Hayes, asked to speak with me. He was the driver at the time of the accident, and his story would change everything. Is Marla/Adele alive? Mr. Hayes was an elderly man, but lucid. He asked for forgiveness before he even started speaking. With tears in his eyes, He told that on the day of the accident he had been instructed not to drive. A man from the Dalton syndicate replaced him with the excuse of a security test. He found it strange but had no authority to refuse. Hours later, he learned of the accident and was silenced with money and threats. He kept that for years, consumed by guilt. "I should have told," he said. "But my daughter was sick. They knew that. They used it against me." He showed receipts and messages that confirmed his version. The car should not have been driven by Adele. But something went wrong, and she disappeared that same night. Hayes believed she survived because the body in the car was not hers. The revelation hit me like silent thunder. It was not just a story of adoption or abandonment. It was an escape, a desperate attempt to protect us from something that still haunts today. I looked at the most recent letter and knew what I needed to do. I needed to find Adele, or what remained of her, and finally discover everything. He was threatened into silence. Days later, a letter arrived with no return address. The handwriting was familiar, elegant, firm. I opened it with trembling hands and read slowly, absorbing every word. It was from Adele. The last one. She said she was sick, in a terminal stage, and that she did not expect forgiveness. She only wanted me to know that everything she did was out of love. She confessed to having faked her own death to flee the Dalton syndicate, which threatened the children's lives. She wrote about the constant fear, the years she watched us from afar, without daring to approach. She told that she cried on every birthday, every achievement, and that seeing Haley wearing the bracelet was her goodbye. "I saw you, Lauren, from afar. And you grew up so strong." These words broke me completely. She attached an old photo, taken from a distance, of me with Richard. A photo I had never seen before. The letter ended with the words, "The truth sets you free, even when it arrives late." And along with it, an envelope with instructions for donating everything Adele owned to a social project. She wanted something good to be born from what remained. A phone call the next day confirmed her death. I did not cry at the time. I just stayed there, motionless, trying to absorb the enormity of that farewell. She watched Lauren from afar for years. With Adele's death and the evidence brought to light, the court concluded the case against the Dalton syndicate. Richard was summoned to testify, and the secret documents handed to the prosecutor sealed the fate of those involved. The judge was categorical. There was crime, there was corruption, and there were victims. The names linked to the organization were finally held accountable, even if belatedly. Ethan, in prison, did not try to defend himself. He knew the end had come. The process was long, painful. Reliving everything required strength. But when the sentence was read, I felt something different. Relief. Not euphoria nor revenge. Just the lightness of seeing the cycle end. Dalton, Claire, and their accomplices could no longer hurt anyone. Richard, by my side, squeezed my hand. We were free, even if the scars remained. Justice had been done. Justice served. But the pain persists. After the trial, I decided that silence would no longer be the heritage of our story. With support from Nathan and Richard, we founded the Adele Whitmore Institute, dedicated to welcoming adopted children and women at risk. Haley participated in the opening ceremony, and her smile lit up everything. Nathan took over the administrative part, while I took care of the emotional area, therapies, listening, welcoming. We turned pain into a bridge. The institute was born from blood, from mourning, but blossomed in peace. Every letter, every tear, every hidden secret led us there. Adele, even in the shadows, was the thread that stitched us together again. When I cut the inaugural ribbon, I felt a serene presence by my side. It was not ghosts. It was the memory of a woman who loved too much to stay. It was the end of the escape, end of the ghosts, beginning of the truth. Now I am curious about you who heard my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you gone through something similar? Support the channel, subscribe, like, comment, and share this video. I am leaving on the final screen another story that you will also like, and it will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching. Until the next video.